Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Villalobos, WeSee's Community Manager, and I would like you to welcome you to this webinar with Microsoft presenting on the topic Tales from the Tech Trenches V2.0. But before we start, I'd like to introduce a little bit about the WeSee's organization. We often go by our acronym WeSee's, as in We Sisters, because that's exactly what we are, a global cyber sisterhood. We are a 501c3 with over 7,000 members in 70 countries. WEEZY is a premier organization with global reach dedicated to bring together women in cyber. Our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. All of our programs initiatives are made possible by the supporting strategic partners such as Microsoft. We have our professional affiliates, student chapters, volunteer committees, mentor-mentee programs, job board, member forums, and so much more. You can view our training programs and initiatives on our website at wesees.org to learn more about the different ways to get involved beneath the WeSees community. We all of our wonderful initiatives to our strategic partners, our tier one partners being Alchemy, AWS, Battelle, Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon University Software Engineering Institute, Cisco, Fortinet, Google, Intel, Lockheed Martin, Meta, Microsoft, Optum, Sandia National Labs, and Sentinel One. Reminder to ask questions throughout the webinar. You can put them in the chat and the presenters will answer them at the end. We have the experts here with us today and they look forward to hearing from you in the audience. So if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the WeSees newsletter at wesees.org to stay up to date for any upcoming WeSee events and trainings. And with us today, we have the Microsoft team presenting on the topic, Tales from the Tech Trenches V2.0. I'll let them take it over from here.
Okay, let's do this. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Jess, does that look good to you?
No, you've got. Well,
give it a second. It was a bit slow when we did this in the rehearsal.
I will wait. I'll be patient. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. For me, it's disgustingly early in the morning. I am based in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, and it is currently just after 6 a.m. So it is very bright and early for me. Sarah, what time is it for you?
I am an hour ahead of Jess, so it's just 7 a.m. for me, so marginally better. Jess, can you see my slides yet? Is it happy? No? Yes?
I can see slides, but it's not in presenter view, if that makes sense.
That's strange, because this worked okay. And let's try that again, because it worked okay in our rehearsal before.
You broke it.
I broke it. Let's try that again. Don't you just love a bit of live stuff that's not working? Right. Let's go again. So if I do this.
I believe in you.
I know. Don't we just love a early morning tech fail? So I can see now if I hit share, this did work earlier. So I'm really hoping it's going to work again this time.
So I can see your screen, but I can just see plain power. I can see PowerPoint.
Oh, man. Okay. One more go. And then maybe we'll, and we tried this before we started and it was happy.
Laura said she can see it. Maybe it's our magic presenter side that we get to see.
Oh, okay. Right. Well, I will do exactly what I just did again. If I'm going to assume that everyone on the webinar can see it. Jess is looking at the comments. If that's not correct, then let us know. So we can see it.
It's PowerPoint, but it's just not in full layout. So it's not like when you hit F5.
Oh, well, that's
suboptimal.
Suboptimal. So if I change a slide, can you see it?
No.
But Laura said she could, right? Because it did work when we were doing this in our rehearsal. So that's why I'm just wanting to.
Yeah, no, that's the wonderful part about rehearsals. Everything will work.
Yeah, well, it worked in the rehearsal. Of course it did. Right. Well, I don't know if we could get some feedback from Laura if that's working. Otherwise, we're just going to have to.
Have you changed slides and move forward?
I have. I am now on agenda. Again, if anyone in the chat wants to help us out and we can work out if this is working, otherwise we'll think of a plan B quickly. That would be amazing.
Sadly not. It is not.
Okay, right. Well, in the meantime, Jess, do you want to introduce yourself? And I will just have a
Hi.
quick fiddle, because that's like suboptimal. And maybe we'll think of another way to do it.
That's all good. Hello, my name is Jess. My name is Jess Dodson. I am what am I this week? A senior cloud solution architect in engineering for cybersecurity. My title has changed a lot over the last 12, 18 months or so. I just do security and identity stuff. I have been with Microsoft now I'm coming up to my 4th year. So my anniversary will be in May this year, which is very exciting. Prior to that, I refer to myself as a recovering systems administrator. So I worked previously as a sysadmin doing identity-based stuff for government and higher education for a long period of time, far too long period of time, but I'm not going to say how long because it'll give away my age. Yay, I can see it now.
Nice. Okay, Jess, we'll go to this and we'll click around. We'll just improvise. There you go.
Oh, good.
You can keep talking about who you are.
So as it says there, I've been in the industry for 20 years now, so I feel very old. My photos that you can see on there are pretty much that's my life. Lego, and that is a QR code to take you off to my Linktree, my adorable Fluff Statler, and my charming 5-year-old gremlin, who I hope won't interrupt me, considering it is early in the morning and she is here at home. So that's me in a nutshell. But I am a massive supporter of women in tech. I do a lot of work for women in tech here in Australia. I co-present the Women IT Pro APAC calls because I cannot code to save my life. And I want to help other women IT pros who also can't code because there's more to just tech than coding. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm
Exactly. And then who am I? So my name's Sarah Young. I am a cloud security advocate here at Microsoft. I'm also based in Australia. I've worked in security for like 10 odd years now. I love talking about lots of different security things. I've written some or co-written some Microsoft press books. So if you're taking Microsoft exams, go look at them. I also co-host the Azure Security podcast with some of my lovely Microsoft colleagues. And I'm definitely a crazy dog woman. As you can see, I have quite a lot of dogs. But clicking back, because we just skipped a page, we're going to have some polls. We'll be doing some interactive polls as we go along. Hopefully that was the end of our tech failing for the day. So you can follow along here. The polls will start as we get to the right slides. We'd love to hear your opinions. There's only about 3 questions. It's all anonymous as well, so you don't need to give us any of your details, but we'd love you to play along as we go. And then I'll go back to the agenda because we've been doing this in a funny order. So we've done our introductions. Then we're going to talk about just a level set of what we're doing here, what we're going to talk about today, talk about a little bit of a history of this talk. And then we're going to talk about some of these tales from the tech trenches, what we can do. Is it getting better? And what we can do to shift the needle. So with that, as I said, we're doing this in a bit of a funny order, but just a quick level set before we go any further. Jess, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, so the big thing that we want to call out here is that we are talking about this from our experiences and the experiences that have been shared with us. So we understand that this isn't going to be representative of everybody because, well, when we put out the call asking people for their stories and our own stories, we know that it's not going to be representative of everybody. I think Sarah and I are both very aware of our own privileges. We are both cis-het white women, which means that we are afforded quite a lot of privilege. Yes, we're women, but for the most part, that still gives us quite a lot of privilege. So we are aware that there are going to be stories that come from other people in the industry who come from other minority groups and other intersectionalities that are going to experience it differently to us and probably a lot harsher than we have and others have. We're not trying to shame or complain. I think that's probably the other really big one. Sarah and I have discussed this a lot. It's no good just to whinge about it and have a sort of bitch fest about it because that doesn't fix anything. We don't want to just complain about a subset of our industry. We want to try and make this better. Okay.
Yeah. And so just to add to that, yeah, what we definitely don't want to come across as best we can is like ladies just complaining, because I'm sure some of you know, there are people out there who would just, when we do that and we tell stories, people often will label us as just angry women in tech. Now, obviously, those people who have those opinions, of course, do probably need some education and an attitude change as well. But to try and be inclusive, we have to not shame anybody. But at the same time, we're trying to build awareness that there is still, there are still challenges out there. And yeah, go on, Jess, go on. You and I can both talk about all of these slides individually for hours. So
until we're blue in the face, which, considering how pasty white we both are right now, that would probably that might be an improvement for both of us. What we're wanting to do here is we're wanting to make it better. So yes, we have to talk about what's going on, but that's only a very small subset. So it's to highlight those challenges, but then to talk about how we make it better. That's what this is focused on.
Yeah. And, we want to work together to uplift our industry. Things do and still do, people have done things that are discriminatory, harassing, whatever. And they do happen and we don't want to trivialize them. But, all we can do is push forward to try and work together to uplift our industry. And, this is our small contribution to that. I mean, of course, both of us do other things as well, but this is where we wanted to, this is what we're doing today. So
right now.
Yeah. So, again, I'm going to let Jess start with this because Jess is the lady who kicked off these talks back 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Wow.
5 years ago. Yeah, I kicked a pebble. So 5 years ago, I wanted to, I can't believe it's been that long. I wanted to know whether it was just me, but I knew that it wasn't just me. So I wanted to get stories from other women in tech about what they had experienced and the kind of behavior that they had experienced against them that I think a lot of the men in their lives and the people that they worked with were not aware of because they had never shared it before. They didn't feel comfortable sharing, or in some cases, they didn't even think at the time that it was a big deal. And I put the hashtag in there of 1,000 paper cuts. Now, the reason that I did that is because I do feel that it is like 1,000 paper cuts being in tech as a woman, because it isn't usually big things. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of big things that happen to some women, but for a lot of the time, it's just really small microaggressions, as we call them, and they just build up over time. And yes, one paper cut won't hurt you, but 1,000 paper cuts will have you bleed out. And it's demoralizing, and it's why we were losing people in the industry. So I put the call out, and I love that I still managed to put in one of my most popular tweets a typo. I can see it right now, and it's like glaring right in the middle of it, and it's driving me nuts, but that's okay. And the stories that we got were just mind-blowing, and I would say I want to say depressing because it's stuff that shouldn't have been happening even in 2018.
Yeah. And you did do a talk, right, Jess?
I did.
You did. This is why this is version 2.0 for those of you who are not aware. You turned it into a talk, right?
I did. I got up on my ranty high horse and decided to present a talk on this back in 2019. So I gave that talk. I've given it now a couple of times. So I gave that talk in 2019 at 3 different places. And it was interesting how it was received. I did have some men come up to me afterwards who were like, I had absolutely no idea that this is what was being experienced. I didn't realize this. Or in some cases, they were even self-aware enough to realize that they had done some of these things and they didn't realize that it was a problem, but that had opened their eyes to it, which was good to see. I did get a lot of pushback from some people again, like what Sarah was saying, just a woman in tech getting up and complaining about stuff. But the talk that I gave was talking about how to fix the problem. But I think it was the stories that came out, and it was that shared experience with women from all around the world in tech of things that they had experienced. And it was quite, I found it really quite, I wouldn't even say depressing. It was just saddening to me that it wasn't just me, that there were women out there who had experienced even more hurtful and abusive behavior towards them simply for existing in this industry.
Yeah, and I mean, I know I can add to that, I too have experienced it as well. So I know it happens, but it's always very depressing when you find out. You kind of hope it's an exception rather than happening regularly, but it does seem that, it's still a problem, right? And so, well, we say about 3 weeks ago. Actually, this is definitely not 3 weeks ago. We should have updated that.
I was going to say, what is it, November? Like 3 months ago now.
Yeah, wow, doesn't time fly? So, Jess and I, Jess, how did we get onto this? Were we talking to each other? I can't remember how we actually started this now.
I'm pretty sure you and I were having a chat privately in Teams going, we really need to do something again because we're trying to work out, we were trying to work out whether it had gotten better. Did we think it had gotten better? So we put out another tweet going, we're looking at giving this talk again. So we want to know, are you still experiencing this? What stories do you have? Can you let us know what you're seeing? And so we put that tweet out and then we got some responses back.
Yeah, we did get some responses back, that's for sure. So this is why this is version 2.0 of this talk. So story so far. Now, before we go any further, fingers crossed this is going to work. So if you're playing along at home, it's with the Poll EV. Hopefully this is going to update live. I don't know if any used Poll EV. It looks like it's working, so hooray. As I said, it is anonymous. So please, if you feel comfortable, please do participate. Apologies for the because I think we've mostly got a US audience. We've done an Australian English spelling of marginalized, but well, so far that's 100% because this does update live as we're doing it. But Jess, we have done this talk before, but usually we found that pretty much we did find some people said they didn't feel marginalized, but like I said, we're getting a solid 100% yes at the moment. So I assume that, I know there'll be more than one person voting. It's but if everyone's voting yes, this isn't going to change. So
and I think and I think that right there is showing what we felt when we even put out those tweets, that we're not alone, that we're not the only ones that are experiencing this, that it's happening to pretty much all women in tech. And while it's nice to know that it's not just you, it's really sad to see that it is all of us, and it shouldn't be.
No, yeah. Wow, I'm really surprised that we are sticking at a solid 100%. I mean, obviously, the audience we have here, I guess that's not so much of a surprise, because I'm sure the majority of us watching this, and even if you're not, by the way, if you're not a woman and you're another minority, or even if you're a man, that can still happen. I can tell you a story that has happened since we did, Jess, that we did this talk last time. I'm not sure if I've told you this, but I know that a gentleman in our industry in this part of the world, he was publicly shamed because he was supporting women in tech, and he's quite vocal about it. And somebody else was giving him some abuse online, saying, oh, well, you're just doing that, it's just an act, you don't really care, you're just trying to get into bed with women. I mean, I paraphrase a little bit. What the person said was actually more crude and disgusting than that. So, being marginalized for being an ally is mind blowing, but that happens too. So, I'm sure there are some gentlemen on this call listening, and yeah, I can definitely, find that you could be marginalized too.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a big call out as well. The whole idea of allyship. Allies face this as well, for calling stuff out, but I think it's testament to those people that they continue to do that.
Yeah, no, and good on you if you do, by the way. But yeah, don't think that the sort of bad behavior or things that, marginalizing people is just about the actual minorities. It can happen to allies as well, and I have seen it, which, yeah, it just blows my mind. Anyway, I don't think we're going to get anything apart from 100%. So we wanted to ask you folks watching this question before we moved on to our slides.
Yep.
Just so we couldn't actually influence you. But here is a selection. This time, in Jess's previous talk, you had quite a few slides of stories. This time we only did one, because we want to focus, a bit more on what we can do. But I don't know, Jess, any highlights? I say highlights, maybe lowlights is the word here. But yeah, Jess, any lowlights for you on this page in particular?
I think, for me, like, it's the slimy sexual harassment that really gets to me when we're looking at this. It's the fact that we have men who seem to think that the women who are in their workplaces are there as sexual objects, which is not the case. And that, to me, why? There's no other way of putting it. Just why? So that, like that top one that we've got up there, I haven't had a woman on the floor in my bedroom in a long time. If it sounds creepy in your head, it's creepy. Don't say it. Like, this isn't.
Obviously, the treating people as a sexual object is obviously horrible. But I think the ones that get to me, though, things where people almost use initiatives against them. So, the one there, sort of left in the left hand side in the middle. 3 weeks into starting a new company, a colleague told me I was just a diversity hire. We wanted to hire this other guy, but HR told us we had to hire a woman, and you were the best one. That's like it's not even a backhanded compliment. I know that's what some people will call that, but to me, that's not even a compliment. They're
No,
just
that's
like,
not a compliment.
we just needed a woman because that's what HR says we need, which is almost using the programs against you, which I really, really detest. I mean, how depressing to be told that, in a new job. And it's not the first, that's just one of the anecdotes we heard. There are others as well.
I know, and I have experienced that. So I've heard that both from being selected to work at Microsoft, as well as having my conference presentations, my CFPs accepted. I have been either told to my face or behind my back that it was only because I was a woman. It's nothing to do with my technical ability, nothing to do with the way that I present or my presentations. It's only because I'm a woman. And the fact that they seem to be able to just collapse everything we are down to purely our gender is just no. No. Yes, we're women in tech, but we're good at what we do. Like, there is a reason that we have these jobs, that we are giving these talks. It's not just because we are women. Yes, we're women, but that's only part of the intersectionality of what we are. We're good at tech, and we're good at security.
Yeah, it's like the one on the right there. I was told my male peers were in a different league to me, even though we all did the same role. And when they called out the person who said this, the person was told, "Oh, don't take it personally." How could you not take that personally?
Yeah.
It's pretty personal.
It's very
When you all
personal.
do the same job and someone says you're in a different league, I would take that personally.
Yeah.
And then, well, yeah, I mean, as you know, obviously, then we had the maternity leave story there. An HR person. Now, I know HR, what they do and what they're allowed to do and say does vary quite a bit. I didn't mention in my introduction, in my intro talk, that I have lived in the US and Australia and a couple of other countries, and I know sort of what HR do and employment laws are quite different depending on where you are. But I can tell you that, and I know 6 weeks might in the US be quite good, but in most countries that's quite bad. I know the US is different. 6 weeks is very, very low for paying for maternity. And I'm really surprised because that one came from an HR rep as well, that they'd probably be a little bit more mindful. I know that particular story doesn't come from the US, so paying for only 6 weeks is very very low for outside of the US.
And then we have I would say the absolutely abhorrent sexual harassment that we're seeing with the junior colleague trying to get me to have sex with them in their car, and then to try and report it, that there's no sexual harassment policy.
Oh, I mean, that to me, it must be probably quite a new business or quite a small business to not have a sexual harassment policy, because I think big corporates will have one, but I can't believe that any business with sort of more than like a couple of employees doesn't have something. It's not okay.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, it's again, I'm not sure where in the world that one came from, and we wouldn't call that out specifically anyway to keep people anonymous. But I think most countries nowadays have employment laws against that. So, so you really should have a policy.
Yeah, and this is we very purposely, when we were talking about giving this talk, we've confined it to this slide. In the previous talk that I gave, the stories spanned over 4 or 5 slides. There was a lot of stories, and we didn't want to just dwell on them, because I think a lot of people can relate to the stories that they're seeing here, that they tend to be specific paths of harassment that we see, be it told you're a diversity hire, be it told that you're not as knowledgeable as your male peers, be it even looked on as not technical. You're seen as the receptionist or the office staff or the coffee girl, which I've had before.
I've had that. Yeah.
It's
not for a while, but yes, I have.
Definitely not for a while, because I haven't left my home office in a while. I'm only the coffee girl for me.
Yeah. Actually, I suppose I am the coffee girl for me, which I'm okay with. But...
I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a smattering of what we're seeing, and that these stories are still happening. So we put out that call in November last year, and these came through, and most of these happened last year. And I think that's the part that's sad.
Yeah, this is still, look, and I'm sure everyone who's watching or listening to us, there's a problem. I think the thing I want to call out as well, just before we move on, because as Jess said, we don't want to dwell on it for too long, is that some of them are, some of them aren't, but they're kind of a little bit more subtle in the way they're delivered nowadays. I think that's a big change. It's either a one-on-one conversation where other people aren't listening, or it's kind of a subtle dig. It's not like saying in front of everybody, "Oh, you're a lady," or you're some other minority, you're useless. And I think that's something that is important to call out, because I think, as Jess was saying, when she did her talk a few years ago, people came up to her at the end saying, "I had no idea this was still a problem," because everyone knows, I think most people know now, it's not socially acceptable to sort of straight out just say to someone's face in a group of people, you're a woman, you don't understand, or whatever. So I think that unless you're a direct recipient of these little paper cuts nowadays, these microaggressions, you wouldn't necessarily know it was happening unless it happened to you. And that awareness piece, I think, for other people who might not consider themselves to be minorities, like, I think that's why we have to keep talking about this, as uncomfortable as it can be for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the big thing. We have to keep talking about it, which is why we're doing this talk.
Yeah, exactly. And so, is it getting better? Now, again, we're going to have a poll before we give you our opinion. So feel free to hop on your phones or online, and we'll see what we get for the answers. I'm kind of hoping this time, just so it looks like PolEV is working, that we won't get 100% in one. But let's see.
So, and an announce has gone out for the link for that one. So POLLEV.com/tech trenches is this particular poll. So if you're participating, hopefully,
yes,
we're getting a change.
We don't have consensus. That's good.
Although it's
I was kind of wondering if PolEV wasn't working. So
no, it's working.
It's working. Yeah, that's good. Look, as I said, we'll let it go for a minute or two, and we'll just talk over it whilst we'll give people some time to put in your answer. Yes is winning, so that's a positive thing. That's,
it is.
I know. Not yes isn't winning, 100%. But that's positive. So we'll give it another minute, 30 seconds, a minute, before we tell you what we think. But
I think that in itself is positive. We're seeing.
Yeah. Go on, Jess.
Where we are seeing some roads towards it. We're not saying that everything's being fixed right now.
No.
But yeah, it's nice to see that even the audience is seeing that the majority of people are seeing that it is becoming more inclusive.
Yeah.
I'm saddened to see a quarter of folks saying that it's not, which to me says that they're still experiencing really marginalized behavior and feeling like they are not included in their industry, which is really saddening.
Yeah, look at that. I think we've sort of bottomed out there a bit at 75-25, which is a good sort of spot to be. So yeah, positive vibes. So Jess, what do we think?
Yes, but nowhere near quick enough. That was me that put that one in there. So I'm very big on, yes, we're doing something. Obviously, things are getting better, but I don't think it's getting better quick enough. I think there's a lot of, we're doing things and we're looking at putting this process in place. And there's nothing to move it fast. And I do think that that's got to do with generations of people who are in the industry as well, that we are seeing a slow shift as we are having generations come out of the industry, that we are seeing younger people being far more inclusive. It's just part of their makeup now. Like, they are just inclusive by nature because that's what they've been raised on. I think it's much harder for some of the older generations to unlearn some of that. And I think that's why we've seen some of that in the past.
But I will shout out the awesome, I can't think of the right phrase. There are some older people or people who are later in career who've been in the industry for a while. There are some of you folks out there who are great allies. And so we're not saying that that's impossible.
No, definitely not at all. And I think it's testament to those people that they have been able to change. To be fair, in tech, if you don't like change, you're probably in the wrong industry. So being able to change is something that a lot of folks in tech have. Like, they have to be able to change.
Yeah, exactly. I would say as well, DNI or diversity and inclusion. Obviously, DNI, particularly if you're in any sort of fairly sort of medium to upwards corporate, is usually something that's often a corporate priority to do diversity and inclusion, which is great. The fact that most businesses of any sort of reasonable size nowadays will have a DNI goal, I think is amazing, because that didn't used to be a thing. However, there's still quite a lot of lip service to it. Initiatives can be very point in time. Sometimes, people just have it as a tick box on their annual review. There's not always the commitment to it. But I would say that the fact that businesses are and organizations are trying to make people do it, whether they want to or not, is at least bringing it to the forefront of people's minds. But I think, although there are a lot of DNI initiatives, I would say they're not all made equal. Do you think that would be fair, Jess?
No, and I would agree with that there is doing D&I for the right reasons and doing D&I for the wrong reasons. And I think we're seeing that organizations are changing and they are doing D&I, slowly moving towards doing D&I for the right reasons. And it isn't just doing it on a specific day or a specific month. There is this push to change the culture entirely, but that it's a slow process. That being said, you do still see with some organizations and even with some people inside of those organizations, it is lip service to D&I. We've been told we have to do this, so we have to do this. And you can tell that it is, I am doing this because I've been told to do it, not because I actually believe in it.
Mm. And of course, we did say this at the beginning, but we'll reiterate it here. D&I, of course, isn't just gender. We know we're on a WeSys conference now. So I assume, the vast majority of our audience will probably identify as women, which is great. But when we're talking about inclusion and diversity, obviously it's not just gender. There's lots of other aspects to it. Now, the gender side is probably what Jess and I can relate to the most. So you'll hear us talk about women in tech, but we know that it's more than that, and the problems actually could be more severe. I think actually when people think D&I, or the vast majority, in tech, we often immediately jump to women and gender. But of course, and it's not just women when we say gender, of course, gender is a spectrum, right? And there's other aspects of D&I. So I think there's still a ways to go in that space as well. Would you agree, Jess?
100%. And I think it's moving away from D&I purely being focused on women and focusing more on diversity as a whole. We call it diversity and inclusion and go, we're focusing on women. That's not very diverse and inclusive. So I would like to see D&I being that whole spectrum of people. And when we talk about D&I and the idea of D&I, it's about getting that diversity of people, because it's diversity of thought and diversity of opinions, because that makes organizations better. I don't understand why organizations can't get on board with this, that it's, if you have people who are from different walks of life, who come from different backgrounds, who experience the world differently, it will make your organization better because you are now getting those viewpoints. And I think it's very important that when we talk about D&I, that we aren't just focusing on women, that we are focusing on that intersectionality of everything, be it gender, be it sexual orientation, be it race, be it disability, whatever it is, we are including as many people as possible.
For sure. Here's something. This is actually from. These are actually some Australian statistics, but we wanted to put them in because you don't often get. We know that just to show. Again, we're being inclusive. Also, we live in Australia, but this is some research that came from Australia about the proportions of women in information security occupations in this part of the world. As you can see, we have a ways to go.
We're tiny.
I think. Sorry, go on, Jess.
We're tiny. There's so few of us.
There is, and also we know that, and again, not. I know that just because of the time we're broadcasting this, a lot of you folks will be in North America, but we wanted to show you that, in fact, this same problem persists throughout the world. It's not just North America. We have a skill shortage generally in security, as we know, and then the proportions of women to men, gender still isn't great. It's getting better, but it's not amazing. So as you can see here, this is sort of a problem throughout the world. We wanted to throw in some Australian statistics because we're from Australia. And, you see similar things, of course, in all parts of the world. So, moving on, but how do we actually shift the needle? Talking about what we think we can do to make it better. For starters, how do we make it better for everyone as well, not just women, for everybody? Jess, you have a little gremlin. Did you call her?
I have a tiny person. Yeah, she's gremlin monster.
Yeah. Good. I was going to say, I think you just used the word gremlin, and now I'm going to look awful on our live recording.
She looks like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, but she is a demon spawn in disguise. It's fine. But the big thing that I've taken on, and I had this even before I was a mum, starting young, because it starts as kids. The whole genderizing of roles and what people do, it does start as kids. And yes, there are some things that kids are drawn towards just naturally. My daughter loves dolls, she loves makeup, she loves dress up and all of that, and that's fine. That's what she loves. It's not something we've forced on her. That's just something that she adores. At the same time, though, she loves playing Minecraft and Roblox and Pokemon because she loves gaming, because she's seen us do it. And so getting kids interested in tech from a young age, all kids, not just the boys, but also the girls, and showing how it can be beneficial to them. And I think we're seeing that already starting in a lot of schools now, with devices being used a lot and coding being taught early. But for me, the big thing is that it's about that starting young, that you don't have to be a specific gender to have a specific job. You don't have to be a man to be a doctor. You don't have to be a woman to be a nurse. You don't have to be a woman to be a teacher. You don't have to be a man to be a construction worker. You can be whatever you want to be. And I feel that we inadvertently and very accidentally push the narrative when it comes to things like play and dress up, that there are gender stereotypes there, and it's helping to try and break some of them down. If we can break them down, it means that when they get to school and then high school and then moving up to tertiary, they're less likely to be pigeonholed into specific industries.
I think as well, this tall poppy syndrome, we should be helping each other. And one of the things that I find really sad sometimes, as you know, as minorities in tech, we have it hard enough as it is to, make sure our voices are heard and we get sort of equal treatment. But sometimes what we see as well is, and this is a real shame, and Jess, I know we have talked about this privately as well, is that sometimes minorities, there are certain people in minority groups that sort of revel in being the special one, and they enjoy being the only lady, or the only person from a particular background, or the only ethnicity. And then when someone else comes in who they relate to, or who has similar characteristics to them, another woman or whatever, they actually sort of see it as them impeding on their space. And they want to be the only one. They enjoy being special. And I have seen examples of, and I'm sure you have too, Jess, of people who really should be helping each other, considering the challenges, the wider challenges we face, actually sort of trying to compete with each other, and not helping each other. I have experienced this more than once in my career, and I find it so utterly depressing that again, I speak from my experience that women will sometimes try and shoot each other down because they kind of want to be prime. I'm the most successful woman in security, blah, blah. I think it is probably one of the things that depresses me most about the industry. I think there is more than enough room for all of us. We're not suddenly going to become 50% of the workforce overnight. So there's no need to shoot each other down. It's not something that everyone does. I don't want to say that, but it is something I have experienced more than once. And it's really not helpful. So, sometimes we do feel like jealousy, or feelings like that. That's just human. But check yourself, like ask yourself why. If there's a person you don't, you're not getting along with, I mean, hopefully you do this anyway in the day-to-day course of your work. But if you have a disagreement, or you're not, you're sort of feeling some kind of resentment, or you find someone triggering, try and get to know them, like understand their motivations. The chances are their motivations are not to downplay you. It could be a misunderstanding. But as women, please, let's not fight amongst ourselves when we have so much more work to do outside of that.
Yeah, I call it Highlander syndrome, which is that there can be only one. There can be more than one. There can be more than one. And I much prefer to lift other women up than try and stand on them. And that works really nicely. We actually did get a question come in. Do women like Elizabeth Holmes and Anna Sorokin Delvey gain fame and wealth at the expense of career women in tech and security circles? And I think yes and no. Yes, but at the same time, why is it that women are collectively put together and these women are seen as bad women, therefore all women are bad, when men are not seen the same way? So I think it's that to me is an interesting one. It's I don't like the fact that it's because one woman is bad, it tarnishes everyone, and it shouldn't be that way. We don't see it that way for men, so we shouldn't see it that way for women.
Yeah. And also adding to that, and we know this is like a cultural thing that, again, hopefully is going away, but probably it will take generations. Any woman, we know this, any woman who's assertive, who pushes herself in her career, a lot of people will call her aggressive, and things like that. We know this research that the same behavior in women and men is often described as quite negative in women, and it's positive in men. A man would be assertive, a woman would be aggressive, and I too have experienced that. But you've got to remember, check yourself as well, because even if you don't realize it, this is like unconscious bias. By the way, if any of you work for a big corporate and you get the chance to go on unconscious bias training, it is so interesting, because you might sit there thinking, I don't discriminate, I'm a supporter. And actually, when you do unconscious bias training, it will really like question some of the things about yourself. But remember that all of us are not immune to that kind of cultural influences, no matter what we think. So you too might look at a lady and be like, oh, she's aggressive. Oh, look at her, she's pushy. When in fact, she's just probably trying to get ahead as well. Now, I'm not saying we need to love everybody. Nobody likes everybody. Not everyone is meant to be best friends. But we can all be civil and respectful, and taking a step back, understanding someone's intentions. Usually it's nothing to do with you, and it's not a slight against you, I think is really important. So this is kind of check yourself as well advice.
Definitely. And I think it's that self-reflection. You're allowed to have those thoughts. Like, it's totally fine to have.
Yeah, you're also allowed to not like everyone. And if that happens to be a woman, that's okay. But
you haven't betrayed the sisterhood.
No, exactly. You don't have to like everyone, but you also don't have to sort of go out of your way to say shoot them down or something.
100%. So, and I think that ties in nicely. And I'm very aware of time, Sarah. We have done what we always do.
Oh, we've done what we always do. We talk too much. Yeah,
We've talked too much.
Keep going, Jess.
So for me, the other one that I see quite a lot is the giving credit where credit is due, lifting those up who have worked with you. So making sure that when you are doing work, particularly with other women, that you are making sure that they still get the credit that they deserve, that you're not just stealing all of the limelight for yourself, which I think plays into that tall poppy syndrome, Highlander syndrome. Hiring practices is another really big one. And I know I have been able to have an impact, at least in my own little corner of the world, where I've been able to change some of the words that are in our job descriptions to be able to actually get more women applying and get more women on my team, which is amazing, because words matter.
Yeah, and as we know, I use this as a good example here. We know, and I'm sure most of you are aware of the statistics that research shows that a man will apply for a job when he's probably only got like 50% of the qualifications asked for, whereas women will tend to need to be up at about 90% before they would feel comfortable. The one that I like to call out here, I saw it as a meme somewhere on the internet, and unfortunately, I haven't been able to find it again, but ladies, whilst we should be reviewing our hiring practices and changing it to make it more of not of a you must have the following to encourage ladies to apply, I do always say at this point in the talk, ladies, you need to approach applying for a job like Donald Trump approached applying for the presidency. The dude had like very few qualifications for president apart from he was very rich, and he was like, yeah, I can do that. And he did.
Yeah, that's the meme. Lord grant me the confidence of a mediocre white man, which sounds terrible. But
yeah,
for a lot of women, it's what we need to do. We need to realize our own worth.
But if you do have any influence on your hiring practice wording, the chances are that no one has looked at your job description for years, because I get that hiring managers don't really have time and they just copy paste and have a wish list. But if you've got some time, look at the way you write it, even if it's just so much as, hey, a paragraph at the end that says, hey, if you don't have all these qualifications, this is a wish list. If you think you're good enough for the job, please apply anyway. Tell us why. And then look, recruiters will do the initial screening, right? But at least, you might get some different candidates, because if you find that when you're putting a job advert out there and you're only getting a certain type of person applying, like one certain type of person, you need to be asking yourself what's wrong there.
Absolutely.
Don't exist, all these different diverse people. I know there's not as many of them, but if you're only getting a very specific subset of people applying, you need to ask yourself why.
100%.
Yeah.
And as part of that, I think that's that visibility. You can't be what you can't see.
Yeah.
And I know it's said quite a lot, but it's that standing up and showing other women and girls who are coming through, either coming from universities and colleges or who are in high school, who are studying, that this is a career that they can succeed in and that they can do really well in. And yes, I know that we've talked about some of the bad stuff that's happening in the industry, but the aim is to make it better so that by the time these girls come into the industry, that it isn't the same. We want more women in the industry, and we're not going to see change until we get more women in the industry.
Yeah, for example, I remember, going to like a university careers stand, if it's all just men, like, would you go and approach the IT computer science stand? You might not do. You really might not. And then call out bad behavior. Now, we've already talked about, the bad behavior is a lot more subtle nowadays. You might not always see it. And we've also talked about already the backlash from allies doing this, but still, do call it out. You are not in the wrong. Call it out in the correct way. Public shaming is not probably the way to go. If it's in the workplace or if it's at an event, they probably have a whole code of conduct to deal with this. Utilize the things that have been put in place to do so. But, don't let things just go.
And that ties in nicely because we actually did get a question. How can you tactfully call out bad behavior? As a woman, I feel like I'm in a difficult situation and don't want to be labeled as that girl or the complainer. That situation's a really interesting one. And what I've found is getting an ally, getting someone to support me in what I want to say and that they have also seen that behavior. So it's not, number one, it's not just you, but number two, you have a witness that you have made that complaint or you have put forward that issue, so it can't just be brushed under the carpet.
Yeah, and generally in the workplace or at a conference or an event, you can make all of this is confidential. Now, I know depending on the exact situation, someone might be able to work out who it is. I mean, there's kind of, it's very difficult to combat that. But they will. I know that HR should be keeping all the details anonymous. I know certainly conferences will with their code of conduct. They will investigate complaints. They won't tell them who. I can tell you, I've made complaints about people. I don't do it regularly. I would rather, if I have a problem, I will talk. I will, if I can, talk to that person and sort of face them up about it. But there have been a few times where I felt like I've had to complain. And if you don't feel comfortable facing someone up, I don't mind in most circumstances, then, go and do that. Those networks are there for that. And as Jess says, get an ally.
Absolutely get an ally. And workplaces are a tricky one, I think. I think workplaces, it comes down to the culture in that workplace of knowing you can speak to the manager of that person, knowing that HR is going to have your back. And in some cases, they may not, because again, HR is about protecting the organization, not necessarily protecting you. But I think raising it in such a way to places like HR that this isn't just against you, that this is showing that organization in a bad light, that is representing the organization in a way that they wouldn't want to be seen, will get HR on your side.
That's true. That's a really good call out, Jess, that as we know, HR, its function is to protect the company, and people as well, but to protect the reputation of the company. So, as I think, as you said, you just have to sort of position it in a certain way that shouldn't make you be seen as a complainer. And as we said, well, we've been talking about our experiences and the experiences shared with us here. I know we're sort of coming up for time. As we said, we don't have everybody. We know we've talked a lot about gender because that's our experience, and we know it's more than that. Jess, because I know we're sort of coming up on time because you and I talk a lot. Were there any other questions in the chat that?
Nope, that was all of the ones. We've got some comments that have come up. So great to bring up issues, but better to bring up solutions with it. Sexual harassment policy should be part of GRC, so your governance, risk and compliance, and within the set of HR policies that employees and consultants must sign as part of onboarding. 100% agree. I think that's probably, to me, a big flag of joining an organization. If they don't have a sexual harassment policy, probably not somewhere I want to work.
So again, for those of you who are in North America, because I know this is different, I actually know this from experience now. Actually, outside of North America, you do have to sign sign an employment contract when you join a job. I know I was shocked when I went to America and this wasn't a thing. You sign an employment contract, and as part of your employment contract, it will always say you abide by, all the policies of the organization, which includes sexual harassment. But I know that is not standard practice in the US to sign an employment contract, and I think I think it should be, actually, or at least there should be an agreement that you're adhering to the company's policies, not just sexual harassment, other things as well. But I know sort of things work a little bit differently over your way on that one. We probably don't have. There's a couple of things here. Obviously, you're all WeSys people, but there are some other really cool organizations. Black Girls Hack. AWSN is actually, if anyone is watching in Australia, that's the Australian Women in Security Network.
Come join us.
Which is really, which is an awesome organization down here too. If any of you are thinking of going to Hacker Summer Camp later on this year in August, the Diana Initiative is a conference that is for minorities, specifically targeted at minorities. It's a really cool, nice little one-day conference that's just before Black Hat and B-Sides and all the other ones take place. It's a really nice little conference. Obviously, WeSys conference is coming up this month as well. So just some other things there for you. And that's it. I know we've done questions and we're up for time. I will say, though, just to finish, thank you for listening. Also, happy Cybersecurity Women in Cybersecurity Month. Here in Australia, it is the 1st of March, so I can wish you that.
I changed my calendar.
Yeah.
My calendar has changed. It says the 1st of the 3rd.
Yeah.
Calling out a couple of the comments. This was an awesome conversation. Please continue to have these conversations. I have learned a lot also. That's lovely to hear. In relation to the very beginning of our talk, when we were talking about our experience, age isn't anything. Men always brag about their years of experience, so own it and be proud. I totally will now. And then love the equality Lego. Yes, I love my equality Lego set. Thank you very much.
But I think this is probably us. We're up for time, so we'll let everyone get back to their day. Thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking your time out of your day. If you're watching the recording, also we appreciate you taking time out of your day at a different time to listen to us. You can tweet or Mastodon tweet and toot us, isn't it?
Tweet and toots. Yep.
Yeah, at the sort of details below, and yeah. Thank you very much for having us, WeSys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.